My wife is into gardening. My mother was into gardening. And even as a child, I started planting flowers. And when you watch a flower bloom, and then it makes seeds, and then the bees come, and they land on the flower, and then they go to the next flower, and the pollination happens. And then the next year, those flowers come back, and you see them reproducing, and you see God's handiwork, not only at work, but how he puts it into motion, and then it takes on a life of its own. And then I've seen both Jada and Michelle being born. And that is just such an amazing thing to see, that when you look at it, you know that it can't be anything but God.
Amen.
I got to piggyback on you with the garden, because every time I'm in the garden, I go to water the hostas, and they have humongous leaves, and there's no way the water can get to the roots, but their stems are like little tubes. When you put the water on, it funnels it straight to the roots. And every time I water it, I'm like, only God could create this plant so perfectly that it's going to get the nourishment it needs, even though, you know, its leaves could otherwise block it from getting it. And I don't know, I always think of it with my houses.
Brian?
Kind of the same subject. So trees give oxygen for us to breathe, and in return we give off carbon monoxide, and we give them basically what they need to breathe. So it's in the perfect exchange.
Excellent example.
Excellent. It's kind of like being back in grade school when you made those terrariums where you put all the things in and you sealed it. And if you had the right amount of water, it lived, and you had too much, it molded. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah. You cheat, man.
That's good. Yeah. Oh, Tony, I'm sorry.
And I think the author talks about cosmological. The precision of the cosmos and the fact that the Earth is where it is, the way it's tilted, axis, the level of gravity, the atmosphere, the position from the sun, the position from the others. Even the atheists, if you ask, I think it was one of the famous atheists, they said one argument that is very difficult for them to argue, now they still don't believe in God, is that the fact that all the billions of planets, we are positioned in such a way to give life. And when you look at it, the only way that's possible, and when they do the calculations, it's astronomical. It's like 10 to the billion to the billion to the billion to the billion possibility for this to occur. There's a whole lot of others. It's just the human body. I think we're hardwired Romans. It's innate in us. But for me, that was like icing on the cake. When I got into that, and even when I see because the atheists was talking amongst one another, because morality, they don't care about that. But the cosmological is very hard to argue against that. So.
It is. I mean, those formal arguments aren't really going to prove that God exists.
No.
But they kind of give us a logical way to think about it. What do you think of LV? Did you have something?
Oh, yeah. There's something that Herb said that struck me when he was talking about water. And he took the water and he said the same water he drank keep coming back and back. That's God and His beauty. Big Bang Theory could create that. That it has to be a creator that does that. That know that we need water to exist, to live, to drink. And Barry had a sermon he talked about that it's more water than it is land. So God is awesome. I sent Mary a text this morning, and we were talking about the snow. And I said to her how awesome God is. You know, you look at it, it was snowing and all of that, and all of a sudden it's clear. That's design. God knows what He's doing. I say, let's not argue with Him. Let's do what He tells us.
Amen.
Amen. Come on that, because that's pointless to me.
Sister Aiken.
When I see a full moon and when I get to see a rainbow.
I
love it.
Rainbow.
My mother took a picture of a rainbow today. She said, we went from snow. Yeah, she was on 17. And she was like, we went from snow to sun to, and then there was a rainbow right there. It's about 3 o'clock, I guess, or something like that. Yeah, the rainbow.
There's Sister Bonnie Robbins. She goes to West Suburban. My wife, and I got a friend of mine in Houston, and one other friend. Whenever they see a rainbow, they send me a picture of it because it reminds me of God's promise.
It's amazing how well God understands us. When we think of the rainbow, go ahead.
No, you're right. Well, one thing that that you realize too is the sophistication of the body itself, the circulatory system, the lungs. It has to be a God to put that together. That's not done by mistake or, as you said, a rock hitting something and all of a sudden. No, you have to have a God has to be in design for it. And it's just so just the defense system from disease and so forth. The way the body works. So integral detail. There had to be a master maker.
And you look at how long it's taken up. We think we're so smart. We've understood all this, and we still don't understand.
We still don't. Right, yeah.
And then the fact that we were created from dirt, and we have all the same elements, except for the one God particle that can't be recreated or whatever. But when you really look at the human body, it's all comes down to the same things that they're doing. Or that's comprised of it.
Willie?
Also, I think just technology kind of shows me there's a God. At least to the fact that it shows me there's something that I can't see. Because when you think of radio waves, ultraviolet waves, all the stuff that on different light spectrum that we can't see, that you got some animals that are a lot more
that can see.
They can
see and hear these things.
That lets you know proof right there. There's stuff going around us that we can't see.
Yes, one. Sorry, I didn't see
the appearance of nature, how a lot of creatures have eyeballs, and just seeing that along nature is there has to be an intelligent design happening here. There has to be more than just what we see. There's other senses as well, and I think I see God from the appearance of the eyes on everybody.
I hadn't thought about that. Daniel?
I'm a Marine. I spend a lot of time in the water, and I spend a lot of time on Navy ships. I like how 100 years ago we created airplanes. Somebody said man will never fly. Now we're in space. And in 100 years we're going subspeed and subsonic speed. We got drones that fly for years now without everybody in the aircraft. And then when it can help create something, there's got to be a God. And there's got to be more to existence than what's here on planet Earth. I don't think we every day when I still hear that little voice saying, we're never going to fly. It's don't put limits on us. Let's put limits on God.
Mine is that what Tony was talking about, gravity. We don't know. If it was done chaotically, would there be any gravity or stuff like that? Gravity, everything, is glued to the earth.
Yep.
Unless you actually have to give some kind of propulsion to lead it. You just can't just float away or anything.
And it doesn't crush us either.
Yeah, and it had to be a designer, something to put all this together, because this is the only planet that I can see. I don't know about others that it cradles life. Life is on this planet. It is nowhere else. And you can't see it nowhere. And then in the evening time, sometimes some of the beautiful sunsets. God is He's just good.
He is. Amen. You know, we think about how he created this, but he also sustains. It's created in a way that sustains, and he continues to sustain it.
Yeah.
You know, he's a creator and he's a sustainer. And, you know, the earth doesn't tilt that extra bit and go wild like our satellites that we launch. All of a sudden they're off a little bit and boom, they're going to crash. Or just go out into wherever they go.
Walter, there was something shocking to me in this book, in the second paragraph when you found it here. He says the Bible does not try to prove the existence of God. And I think this is kind of like what you're saying, Otis, isn't that what you were getting at? This, when I thought about it, I said, this is a little shocking to me. Let me just think about it a little bit. But don't you know, even little kids, I think, prove that God put something. What you said, a word innate, there's something in us that tells us that there's a creator. Now, men will deny it and say, no, you know, I mean, but we know through scriptures that the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. What men think matters little is what God thinks. But when you really examine it, God does. Where you take a little child, your little child when it's growing up, I know when we were raising ours, they know when they do wrong. You know, you can see the expression on their face. Anybody got kids to agree with me? Or
yes,
somebody
absolutely.
Yeah, they know.
They know. And what, and then what?
There's something in us that God puts that let us know. You know, Adam and Eve hiding in the garden. You know, I done wrong. I mean, something that's in us that know that we have a creator.
Yeah. And we know. Go ahead, Tom.
I'm looking at the scripture that Brother Amos is referring to. I always go to Romans 1:18 for the wrath of Romans 1, starting at verse 18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against ungodliness and unrighteousness of man, who by their unrighteousness, once again, we always talk about this, suppressing the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. And here's the key thing, 20. This just magnifies exactly what Brother Aiken said. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived since the creation of the world and the things that have been made, so they are without an excuse. It's innate. God has put a light in us, and it's innate. And when I go away from that, I'm suppressing the obvious truth. That's why, and this is what Otis was saying, in the beginning, God. It's always, it's a principle. It didn't say in the beginning, a God, in the beginning, God was created, because a lot of people say, well, who created God? He has always been. He's eternal. And he says his eternal attributes has always been known. And I don't know what you're suppressing. I'm pushing the truth down. I don't want to see it, but it keeps coming up.
And in tone, I have the New King James Version, and I like the way verse 20 says, "For since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse." It's the same thing. That's what sort of what we're talking about here.
I was just listening to Brother Aikens, jumping ahead a little bit when we're looking at our words and glossaries. The ontological.
That one. We'll just call it that one.
Pardon me?
That one.
Yeah, that one. I wrote it down in my glossary. But that's the argument of our perception that we know that there's a perfect thing. It's in us. Yeah, so that was just one of the words that was in my glossary.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
It gets back to the very beginning there.
Why don't you, if you have your Bibles with you, why don't you turn to Romans 1, where we've been reading.
What verse are we talking?
Romans 1, verses 18 through 32. I'm going to have some up here, but I really would like for you to have a Bible and look at them. What's going out, we're online still, but what's going out is only what's on that screen. So they can, and our voices. So we still have to behave. Nobody can figure this out. But Romans 1:18 and the following verses are so profound. I'd like for us to read them together. Herb, do you have that text? Would you be on to read verses 18 through 32? 32.
For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions, for their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And the men, likewise, gave up natural relations with women, and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men, and receiving in themselves the due penalty for their error. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them.
Sure, that's what you're reading from.
What version?
The version I'm reading for right now is English Standard.
Yes, sir.
You want to hear it in
That shouldn't be the yes.
King James?
That one's NIV. I think we're okay. But just in case you're wondering what's in the book, it's American Standard Version that he quotes in the book.
Right.
I don't know why he selected that, but that's what he did. And I kept looking, trying to figure out where it told me that. And I realized it doesn't have to tell me because it's open domain. You don't have to get permission. You don't have to be used with permission or cite it. You can just do it however you wish. So maybe that's why he's doing it.
Walter,
Yes.
here's an excellent point in verse 29 of these passages when you read them. Nobody has an excuse not to know what's right and wrong. Paul tells us right there. All of these things right here. When you go to evil, covetousness, malice, they're full of envy, full of murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanders, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil. All of these things, I don't want to keep reading because you just read it. But then when we see that in the Bible, you know, those who are trained in righteousness know that I shouldn't do that. Or I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't be envious or want to murder somebody or have strife and they'll keep up a lot of strife and stuff. Then we know what's right and what's wrong, and we need to practice those things. That's training at the righteousness. Right, priest?
It sure is. Absolutely.
Lady, can I ask this question?
Yeah.
Now, all these descriptions here, now are they talking about past behavior or are they talking about what I'm going to call future behavior? Because I'm thinking when this...
Present too.
Like Ecclesiastes says, nothing new under the sun. Same evil they were dealing with then is we dealing with now.
And so, just to make sure I understand what is being said here, people was doing those things a long time ago.
Yes. Yes.
And
They're still doing them. And they'll do them tomorrow either.
And people
Which-
are approving of those practices.
That's right. So what they're saying is someone's seeing this happening, and they think it's okay. They're not even saying,
Don't do it.
and it's disobedient to parents, and then the inventors of evil. So in case this list isn't complete and covered every last thing that you could do wrong, you can invent additional things. So it's a catch-all. So it's including but not limited to all these things. Okay? Because it's really our heart, remember?
Yeah.
And God made our heart in a particular way that we do know what's right and wrong. Go ahead, Tony.
And this is the result, Otis, this is the result of people not acknowledging that there is a God. Or they haven't understand there's a God, but I am going to suppress that truth. And what's the end result of that? This is truth. The end result is just like in the garden. It's the downfall of man. Mm-hmm. Morally, intellectual, everything it just falls apart away from God. When I don't acknowledge that there is a God, this is the end result. Man will worship.
Yep.
We will worship something.
It's exactly. He says 3 times God gave them up.
God gave
He
them
says
up.
it in verse 24, verse 26, and verse 28. And in every instance, giving up was due to sin, was due to idolatry.
That's right.
Which is you're worshiping, making something more important than God. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have that statue for it to be idolatry. So you're going after something, and it's impacting who you are. You're no longer you're erring from how God created you.
Yes.
You're choosing to suppress that innate understanding. It kind of looks. Think about the other passage they looked at extensively was Acts 17, Paul's address on Morris Hill, where he talks, and we're familiar with that. And I didn't put it up, but I'm not even sure I did put it up. I put it, but whatever. But you can open up. It's Acts chapter 17, starting verse 22. Think about that. So if man has this innate knowledge that there is a God, that there is a creator, there is something superior to himself, then it's so interesting that those people in Athens, the smartest people of the day.
When you put it up.
It is right there.
Oh, I thought you said it wasn't up.
It's the smartest people of the day were the people who were the most ignorant. Mm-hmm. Those people in that having that discussion were what you would call the scholars of the day. Debating things and looking at things, and these are the people that miss the boat so much. Mm-hmm. So it's mind-boggling to say that Paul didn't argue that a God existed. He instead sought to make known the specific, true, and living God that they were already acknowledging in ignorance by having a to the unknown God. They knew they were missing something. They just didn't understand it, and they didn't care to find out.
So what Tony said is true. We will worship something.
We will worship something.
We will worship something.
Absolutely.
If there's nothing more than a man, we will worship something.
Yep.
It's in us. It's innate.
It is, and that's what's frightening when we worship a man. We're worshiping the creature instead of the creator. And it should seem obvious that if something was created in front of you, there must be a creator to go with it. We've discussed how how the body is so magnificent, how the flowers work, and how all these things are, and how it's just a minor round of rain, so that we don't flood, and we can, it rains and it's dry, and things can grow. These things are just mind-boggling to think about. And I want us to kind of keep thinking about that, not just while we're here together, but we're thinking about who God is, because He is.
Well,
yes, sir.
And when you look at this, he says that the men of Athens, in all things I perceive, they were very religious. So he was, because they're talking about gods, plural. They have the little trinkets. And so there is a level of commitment there.
Yeah.
And that's reminiscent of Paul in Romans 10. And he says, my heart desire and prayer for Israel is that they might be saved. I bear them record. They have a zeal for God.
Without the knowledge.
Let's see, not without knowledge. So he's acknowledging, you are very religious. I'm seeing. And that lets us know religion in and of itself is not going to save you.
No.
Because they're worshiping the wrong thing. You got a zeal for God, Israel, but you haven't acknowledged the Son. And he says, my heart's desire and prayer for Israel is that they might be saved. So you're not going to be saved despite your zeal. You're not going to be saved because you're very religious. So let me tell you about the God that you ignorantly, He made everything. Because their God came from dirt, and somebody came out somebody's eyeball, and this was in their leg, and so they have all these crazy things. So he acknowledges the fact that this God, He made everything. They have different gods that make a bunch of this. He says this God has made the world and all the things therein. Yeah. And so he's trying to get them to the one God. They're worshiping something, so let me bring you to the one God that you should be worshiping.
Danny?
In Moses' they were worshiping calves. If you can go farther, you forget the Greeks and the Italian and the Romans, go back farther, they would wear shells around their neck. Because they worship the planet and they worship whoever created the planet that we're on. They worship God innately because we know there is somebody that created this. And gave us the ability to use tools to farm the land. So it goes way back there, even before the. Now my kids today think they know everything because they got computers.
Yep. And they do, right?
Right. They don't worship their parents. They don't worship anything.
That's one of the things Bird read for us. They're not obedient or submissive to their parents.
When God got Moses to go back to Egypt to bring the people out, and he asked God. He said, well, who should I tell them you are? Because they had a multiplicity of gods in Egypt. So are you one of their, not their God, but are you just going to be one of them? And God said, tell the people that I am, that I am. And that says a lot because He is.
He is. Right. He's past, present, and future. All crammed into one.
And each one of the plagues that was brought on Egypt was an affront to their God. And so there is but one God. And there's none other.
Exodus 3.
Something had to happen because Pharaoh told them to get out. Get everybody out.
Go ahead.
Kind of connected with Ted, but when I was reading a lot of this, I started thinking about the name of God and what it meant or who He was. And I was listening to a PTP. I started listening to it during my lunch. But one of the first things the guy brought up, he said, sometimes when people hear the word or whatever God, they think what it is, not who He is. And I thought that distinction, it made me really stop and think about, you know, a lot of people to God, it's what God is versus who God is. And I just, I don't know, kind of got me digging down into that.
Let me go back again and tell you somewhere in here initially, when I first started reading the Bible, and when it says, in the 7th day God rested, and my human mind was telling me just what this gentleman was talking about, what man have been able to do. And, you know, truly I get that. And so really I was trying to ask myself, can an individual do this in 6 days? Probably. Really, that was my mindset. It's like, but then where I got the answer, it says God spoke it into creation. Well, see, again, the same thing. See, I'm thinking, but he was thinking about what man is able to do, you know, because I know I started out and I said, well, because I was talking to a guy and I said, and I think he was talking about transportation, and I was saying to him, you know, really some time ago it was horse and buggy. And going to his point, and he said, now we can put man in and see again, man is able to do all these things. But see, once again, it went through that. I heard all y'all talking about the sun and the moon, and once again, I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. You know, I really do. Because in here, the other one, and let me throw this out here, because with some people, it's a race thing. It's like, okay, what color is God? You know,
He is.
God is.
God is.
We're all in His image.
He made all the colors.
Yeah, so he's all colors.
That's what he made all the colors.
No, but then,
is he?
And I don't want to make it sound like I'm the only person who might have heard some of these.
No. I've heard them. You're not alone.
Yeah. And so again, that's when I said again, and then now for me, again, when I heard this once again, now I go back and I try to say, especially if I go and I say, well, it said God walked this earth, and you know, He was just like man, He interact with us, and on and on. And now once again, I'm trying to get my mind around, like y'all talking about, really the magnificence of this world. Really, the sun comes up every day. It goes down every day. And I'm like, really, that's a number of things. And for me, really, and I'm thinking, that's amazing. And how is that? Now I get, you ready to have?
Oh yeah, you can go.
No, go. I'm finished.
Oh no, I ain't mean to interrupt you.
No,
I just something that kind of just popped up. I feel like in Genesis, you know, the fall of Adam and Eve. It says, right? It says in there that, you know, we were never meant to eat from a certain tree, right? So I take that as that the knowledge of God, at least the workings, how He made everything, was never meant for us. Right. You know. And that's why I think myself, and maybe some of y'all too, I feel like when I put human limitations on God, I can't conceive them. It just kind of just baffles me. And I end up all over the place and right back instead of just acknowledging God is that He's there. Don't put a human limitation on Him. Don't make Him seem like He this big buff guy or this woman with long hair. Just stop. That's why I just need to stop. Just don't, because that's placing a limitation on them. That's you know, to me that's me telling. That's the way I look at it. That's me trying to say I'm more than God. When I'm trying to construct,
if you can decide what He looks like, then you must be more than
I'm trying to construct Him in my mind, and that's impossible because He made me.
One of the things that this author said in his book, which struck me, no matter how we think of God, God is still God. Men will not worship Him. That's their choice. But the wrath is coming, whether we want to believe it or not. I don't know when it's coming, all of that, but it's coming. And the only way to prepare for that is the things that we just read. All of these things that Paul was telling us. Don't get involved with the people you see. And, you know, I've heard people say, I like people who tell it like it is, you know, but what is that person saying? Are they leading you towards God or away from Him? And those are the things you're going to have to start dealing with in this life.
That's right.
I wanted to just touch on a little bit. Question number 3: does Genesis 1 and 2 provide for a gap theory, and why?
Well,
let's see.
You came late, so I made a big mistake. I gave out the sheet for the next chapter.
Okay.
So that's the next chapter, God the Creator.
Oh, okay.
So,
Right.
So
talk about?
we'll talk about that next week.
So we had the wrong.
I gave you the wrong thing. The questions are all in the book. My sheet is just to give you.
Because I told Ron, I said, wait, these questions ain't the same as these questions.
So I'm really sorry about that. So now you're ready. Emily goes through your questions. She'll make sure.
And then Donna called him on it too.
That's right. Donna pointed out, yeah, it was a test. See who did their homework.
So we'll discuss
I apologize. We'll discuss those next week. And Otis, we'll be talking about creation, each day of the creation next week as well. So we'll be focusing in on that aspect of it. I'd like for us to just look at Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6, just for a few minutes. And it says, "And without faith it is impossible to please Him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who seek Him." So I'm thinking the context of where that is in Hebrews. It's in chapter 11. How does chapter 11 start? Now, faith is the assurance of things So, I guess I could have touched it and put it up there, but whatever. You have Bibles. But when I was looking at verse 11, verse 6, I see how this verse kind of looks and enhances that twofold perspective of faith that's alluded in that first part. So to believe God exists is really equal to the conviction of things not seen. And then to believe that God rewards those who seek Him, that's the part of the assurance of things hoped for. We're hoping for that. And seeking Him means more than just acknowledging He exists. Because I think it was LaShonda, reminded us last week that even the devil knows that God exists. But that doesn't mean he's following or trying to attempt to do anything that's consistent with God would want him. So, we have to go deeper. This is an action. We're called to action. We're called to change our thoughts. We're called to control our urges, our desires, and make sure they're focused on what they should be, and not that wonderful list that we've heard about. But it's hard, and it's something that goes. And I really like what Willie said about how we can't come away and think that we can define and understand and create our own picture of exactly what God is. He's more than anything we can ever conceive. So, as we look through this week and as you continue to read the next chapter, I'd really like for you to think about that and look up the scriptures and read them, and then do the questions that fellow already has done. I'm looking at you. We're all going to call fellow, but there was So, was there any particular question that stood out to you, or the ones that were actually applied to today's lesson? Donna Watson didn't, so was the one that stuck out to you? We kind of talked about why the Bible doesn't try to prove God's existence. You think about if you were going to introduce someone at a dinner, a famous speaker who's going to come and speak to them. You're going to get up and you're going to introduce them. What are you going to do? How would you introduce that person? They don't know anything about him.
You give her a review about him.
Okay. You tell him something he's done in the past, right?
Right.
Okay. You tell him his background. You tell him where he grew up, what obstacles he overcame. So how do you mesh that with how we learn about God?
We can't judge him. We can't judge him. We can't describe him.
Okay.
We have to make assumptions.
He just is.
Right.
So how do you put those things together? Have you ever thought about that?
God has given us enough evidence to be saved.
Okay.
It's not blind faith.
Nope.
And that's what atheists say. Well, y'all need something. But this is not blind faith. Because of the ontological, cosmological, all the ologicals, because they exist, you come to a conclusion that there is a God. And he says right there in Romans, if you look at nature itself, if you just sit back and examine, somebody talked about, I think it was you talked about the eye, Brother Yance, that was you. The complexity of the eye, where it takes something and it sees something upside down, but it flips it in the brain so you can see it right side up. You know the complexity of genes that have to be in place for that to occur, and they just don't pop up. That is not evolution. Evolution goes against, all the time it goes against nature itself. It breaks down what's necessary to build it up. And so when you look at that and sit back, how do you, what conclusion you come at? There has to be a God. So it's not, now we're in a room someplace, we didn't have all these things, and somebody says, you believe in God? No, I don't believe in God, because, but the evidence that we have, the things that are not seen, the logical conclusion, they said that believing in God is illogical. No, the logical conclusion is that there is a God. You all believe we just popped up out of
which now it's not logical at all.
That's not logical. The logical thing. If I see this, somebody made that. That's a logical thing. I know that just didn't happen and stuff fell down on it.
And that's my wrist. Simple compared to this.
Right. Compared to the human brain, and somebody talks about computers. The human brain, the most sophisticated computer, has nothing on how the human brain. Now, how is that possible? Has to be a God.
Right. Carrie?
And the way I look at it is this. Those who look to the Bible already have a purpose to find the Creator and God.
Yes.
So they're not looking they don't need to figure out the proof that there's a God. They already know.
They just need to know more about it.
And they need in search of to have that relationship we talked about the week before. So I'm thinking it's just like I said, you already know there's God. I'm just seeking Him now. And you seek Him there.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, hey, give me some proof. No, we already know. We talked about those different things.
Well said.
Yeah.
Even the Bible itself, all the prophecies that, come to fruition, and then all the different books that, were compiled to make the Bible, all at different times, different parts of the world, all telling the same story.
Yep.
That's not,
you look at a writer who writes a series of books, like J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter, and in the interview she said, I messed up on some things. Some things weren't consistent.
Exactly.
And this is just one person in one lifetime right there.
Right. And then you take
and then you consider the how the years that the Bible was written over and how it all came together.
Consistent.
So yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Candy.
I was at the VA hospital, at the psych hospital a few years ago, and I'm talking to a psychologist, and she was asking me a question about faith and stuff. And she wasn't a veteran, and she suffered from multiple dystrophies, so she had crutches and things. And I challenged her. I says, do you have a mother and father? She says, yes. I says, do you love them? Do they love you? She says, yes. I go, how do you prove it? And right there, she goes, it's faith. I know you got to have faith. Because you can't prove that your mother and father love you. You feel.
But you observed enough evidence that you could draw that conclusion. And we have so much evidence from God.
I always say, people, well, you can't see God. I said, well, you can't see air, you can't see oxygen, but you know it's there. And
Suck it in.
You breathe it.
That's right. We'll put a bag over your head. We'll believe it's there.
See how that works out.
Yeah. I'm not recommending that to anybody.
Everything about the union.
Anybody else? You prove it to yourself.
Yep. Well, for next week, read the chapter called God Creator. Starts on page 11. Do the questions that you already have. If you want a new sheet that actually says God Creator, you can grab one. I'm sorry about that. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
It's okay. I just did it wrong. But I really appreciate the hard work everybody's been doing to do this, and I'm hopefully we feel we're getting something out of it. We're learning.
Excellent.
Do you have a question, ma'am?
Yes. Somebody wanted to know on the bottom of page 4.
Yep.
The scripture.
Yep. Happily. Happily.
Yeah.
Okay. So verse 25. So it's they should seek God if haply they might feel after Him and find Him, though He is not far from each one of us. That one there.
This right here. Genesis 1.
Oh, it should be 11. It should be 1. It's 11. It should be 1. I'm sorry.
1 through 2 through 25.
She wanted to know what that meant.
Which one?
What was she supposed to read?
Bottom of page 4.
All of chapter 1.
Yeah, all chapter 1
through
25.
Right.
I got
All of chapter 1. Right.
Okay.
All of chapter 1.
All of chapter 1.
up until chapter 2, verse 20.
Right, so all of chapter 1 and then chapter 2, 1 through 25.
Knock me out too.
So I take you're going to read that. I thought you were going after the happily. Okay. Thank you all. I really appreciate your comments, and
All the way to